The climate crisis is no longer a distant threat, it's a present reality. Every day, we hear about record-breaking temperatures, wildfires, hurricanes, droughts, and floods. But what will our world look like in the coming decades if we continue on our current path? According to scientific projections, if we do not take immediate and significant action to curb greenhouse gas emissions, the world's climate will continue to change at an accelerating rate, with devastating consequences for people, ecosystems, and economies worldwide. So in this video, we are going to talk about climatic change crisis. So before moving to next, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for future updates. By the year 2100, if we fail to change our ways, global temperatures could rise by 3 to 4 degrees Celsius. This may sound like a small increase, but in reality, this temperature rise will trigger extreme changes in our climate systems that will affect every corner of the globe. The global temperature rise. What does it mean? A 3 to 4 degrees Celsius rise in global temperatures would drastically reshape the planet's climate. You might wonder, why is this change such a big deal? A small increase in temperature means a huge shift in weather patterns, ecosystems, and even human livelihoods. Here's what we could expect if temperatures continue to rise unchecked. More extreme weather. The frequency and severity of extreme weather events, including heat waves, hurricanes, and storms, will become much more intense. For instance, tropical cyclones may reach unprecedented strengths, causing destruction and loss of life in coastal regions. Countries like the Philippines, Bangladesh, and Mexico could face annual devastation from storms. Droughts will become longer and more severe, leading to widespread water shortages and agricultural failures. As we've already seen in recent years, areas like California and Australia will be vulnerable to devastating wildfires that will grow in size and intensity, threatening wildlife, ecosystems, and human settlements. Global warming amplifies ice melt. Rising temperatures mean the polar ice caps will continue to melt, contributing to sea level rise. This will lead to flooding of major coastal cities such as Miami, New York, Bangkok, Jakarta, and Venice. Entire island nations like the Maldives and Kiribati could be submerged, rendering millions of people homeless and displacing entire populations. In addition to flooding, the melting of glaciers and ice sheets will contribute to a massive loss of freshwater resources that millions of people around the world rely on. Many of these glaciers are already shrinking at alarming rates, and if temperatures rise by 3 to 4 degrees Celsius, the water crisis could become one of the most pressing challenges of the century. The rise of climate refugees. As the climate continues to change, we will see a massive increase in climate refugees, people displaced due to extreme weather events, rising seas, and uninhabitable environments. Droughts will make agricultural land barren, and coastal flooding will destroy homes, forcing people to migrate in search of safety. The UN estimates that by 2050, as many as 200 million people could become climate refugees, seeking refuge in other parts of the world. But the question is, where will they go? Will the world be ready to accept them? Currently, the global migration system is already stretched thin with political tensions and rising nationalism, making it difficult for vulnerable populations to find shelter. As climate-driven migration becomes more common, we are likely to see increased conflict over resources and growing political instability. Water and food shortages, the growing crisis. One of the most direct consequences of climate change will be water scarcity. As temperatures rise, water supplies will be further stressed, particularly in areas that are already experiencing water stress, like parts of Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. Regions that depend on snowmelt from glaciers for their water supply, such as parts of South Asia and the Himalayas, could face drought conditions as glaciers continue to disappear. With changing weather patterns, agriculture will also be deeply affected. Crop yields will fluctuate, and certain areas that were once fertile will become too hot or too dry to grow food. Countries that rely on monsoon rains, like India and Bangladesh, will face challenges as unpredictable rainfall leads to either devastating floods or prolonged dry spells. In regions like Africa, where food insecurity is already an issue, a changing climate will further exacerbate hunger and malnutrition. The food system will also be impacted by changing climates. Key staple crops such as wheat, corn, and rice could see reduced yields as temperatures rise, affecting global food prices. As demand for food grows with a rising global population, supply disruptions could lead to higher food prices and increase the risk of food riots. Loss of biodiversity, the irreversible impact. As the planet warms, the impact on the natural world will be catastrophic. Species that are unable to adapt to the changing conditions will go extinct, leading to a massive loss of biodiversity. This will include not only iconic animals like polar bears and coral reefs, but also smaller, lesser-known species that are vital to maintaining the balance of ecosystems. Coral bleaching. Rising ocean temperatures will continue to cause widespread coral bleaching, threatening the survival of coral reefs that support over 25% of marine life. Entire ecosystems could collapse, endangering fish populations and other marine life that many communities depend on for food and livelihoods. Wildlife decline. Land-based ecosystems will also face disruption. Animals like tigers, elephants, and bison may find it increasingly difficult to survive as their habitats become hotter and more unpredictable. Tropical rainforests, often considered the lungs of the Earth, will become stressed and may lose their ability to absorb carbon dioxide, accelerating climate change even further. The most vulnerable, the poor and marginalized. Perhaps the most tragic consequence of the climate crisis is the inequity it exacerbates. The poorest and most vulnerable communities, those who contribute least to greenhouse gas emissions, will suffer the most. These populations, many living in low-lying coastal areas, will face the brunt of rising sea levels, flooding, and water scarcity. In countries with limited resources, the ability to recover from extreme weather events like cyclones, floods, and droughts will be severely hampered. Developing nations in Africa, Asia, and Latin America will bear the hardest impact, experiencing devastating consequences for both their people and economies. Small island nations, already struggling with rising sea levels, could lose their entire landmass to the ocean. The road ahead. What can we do? The good news is that it's not too late to prevent the worst outcomes of the climate crisis. If we act now, if we work together to reduce emissions, transition to renewable energy, protect natural habitats, and invest in climate resilience, we can mitigate the worst impacts of climate change. Global cooperation will be key. Governments must implement policies that encourage sustainable development, reduce reliance on fossil fuels, and transition to green energy sources like wind, solar, and hydroelectric power. Carbon capture technologies and nature-based solutions like reforestation can also help absorb excess carbon from the atmosphere. At an individual level, reducing consumption, especially of meat and single-use plastics, can have a significant impact on lowering carbon footprints. Supporting companies and initiatives that prioritize sustainability and environmental responsibility is another powerful way to contribute to the fight against climate change. Conclusion: the time for action is now. If we continue to ignore the warnings and delay action on climate change, the future will be far worse than we can imagine. A world with 3 to 4 degrees Celsius of warming will be characterized by more extreme weather, food and water shortages, rising seas, and social unrest. The most vulnerable will pay the highest price, and the Earth's biodiversity will be irreversibly damaged. But we still have the power to change course. By acting decisively today, we can limit global warming, protect our planet's ecosystems, and build a more sustainable, just world for future generations. The time to act is now, before it's too late. Imagine a world where entire cities like New York, Miami, and Bangkok are swallowed by the rising sea, where once thriving ecosystems are turned to deserts, and where coral reefs, the vibrant underwater cities of the ocean, are reduced to lifeless white skeletons. In this future, the very idea of normal weather will become a distant memory. We'll no longer measure the seasons by temperature, but by extreme weather events, heat waves, floods, and storms that ravage the land. The planet will no longer be the world we once knew, but a shadow of its former self, irrevocably changed, unless we act now to halt this irreversible trend. So this is our today's video. If you like our video, don't forget to subscribe to our channel or hit the bell icon. We will meet again with another interesting topic. Till then, stay safe and stay happy.